Welcome to Outdrive, folks. I'm your host, Cliff Callis, and each week I'm bringing you actionable marketing insights you can apply to reach, connect with, and convert rural American consumers. Outdrive is powered by Callis, a full-service advertising agency with a focus on marketing rural America. Callis offers a wide range of integrated marketing services, including website development, search engine marketing, social media, video, and digital. We develop strategic and creative campaigns to build your brand and your business, and you can learn more about us at ecallis.com. Now join me in the front seat as we head out on the road to success. Let's go. Hey folks, welcome to Outdrive. We've got another great story to share with you today about life and work in rural America. If you've listened to our podcast before, you know I'm a big fan and supporter of economic development in rural America. Today, we have the second part of a series focusing just on that. Attracting and retaining businesses in our part of the country has its unique advantages and challenges. Economic development doesn't just happen. It takes a consistent and unified effort, and our guest today is one of those people who helps make it happen. Last week, we heard from Janelle Higgins, Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Missouri Partnership. Today, we're visiting with their CEO, Subash Alias. As you recall, Missouri Partnership is a public-private economic development organization that helps businesses expand into a new location. Since 2008, Missouri Partnership has worked with its partners statewide to attract companies that have created nearly 33,000 plus jobs, 1.7 billion plus in new annual payroll, and 6.4 billion plus in new capital investment. Subash has nearly 30 years of experience leading economic development organization, and he brings us insight into what it takes for a state like Missouri to attract new companies. Welcome to Outdrive, Subash.
Thank you, Cliff. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here as well. I've been excited to meet you and get to know you and hear about a lot of exciting things that Missouri Partnership has been involved in lately, and certainly want to talk about the program, make sure our audience understands who the partnership is and what you're all about and what you're trying to do. And I'm very much interested in economic development. Anybody that's ever listened to our podcast knows that. And so I always like to talk shop a little bit. And so we'll talk about that. But, before we go down those roads, why don't you, if you don't mind, tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Cliff. So, I would consider myself a native Missourian, but I was born in India and my family moved to the United States when I was an infant. So we first went to Boston and we were there for, maybe a year. I have no recollection of it. But then my family moved to St. Louis. My parents are they're now retired physicians, but they were physicians at the time. And so they came for job opportunities in both St. Louis and then they moved to Columbia, Missouri, and were affiliated with the university there. So I spent the first part of my, I was probably 3 years old through halfway through elementary school in Columbia, Missouri, and then moved back to St. Louis again with my family right in the middle of third grade, and then finished high school there. My parents are still actually in that same house. And so that's kind of what I would consider home. But so finished high school there and then went to college in the Quad Cities at St. Ambrose University in Davenport, Iowa, and then started a career in economic development soon after that. And here we are.
Well, St. Louis is a great city. So is Columbia as well. But, growing up in St. Louis, that exposes you to so much culture, so many activities, so many different kinds of people. So growing up in that environment with two physicians in the household, what were your aspirations career-wise? What do you think you wanted to do as you grow up?
I think it depends on, I thought about this. It kind of depends on the age where you are, right? So I think, and it depends if you're assuming I have grown up, that's the other thing too. But I think it was probably the typical when I was really young, the astronaut was in there, right? That was something. And then, as I got older, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was another thing. I even explored, maybe being a pilot, doctor. That certainly came in because of my parents. But surprisingly, it was probably around, right when I was graduating from college. I didn't know exactly what to do. I had a business degree and I wanted to get into I didn't know what the field was at the time, but it's the field I'm in now, economic development. So I guess it depends. So the answer is it depends on how old I was when you asked that question.
Well, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
I can relate to many of those different things along the way. I remember, and I don't know why, but NASA had such a big presence back in the 60s and 70s as I was growing up. I mean, it made you want to be a part of the program.
Right. Now it's being a YouTube star or a TikTok star. That's what everyone wants to do today. But yeah, I don't know if astronaut's still a thing, but what kids want. But yeah, that was one of them. All the typical things I think kids wanted to do it, when you were younger.
Well, you didn't say Major League Baseball player.
No, I did not say that. I really wasn't into sports when I was younger. I got more into sports much later in life, actually.
Never too
Yeah,
late,
so
right?
you're right. Oh, I'm sure a musician was in there somewhere too. I forgot about that one.
Well, what led you to St. Ambrose, small liberal arts college in the Midwest? I went that route too. I went to Missouri Valley. Well, started at Westminster, went to Missouri Valley, and I loved the liberal arts approach to college. But what led you there?
Yeah, so I went to a Catholic high school in St. Louis, and that was, so they recruited at my school, and so part of the issue for me was I was really nervous about going to kind of a large state school, which I had considered, but it just felt right to go to a smaller school. I liked the smaller class sizes in high school, and I was looking for that again. And so that's how and I also wanted to go somewhere that wasn't too close and wasn't too far. And I wanted to study business, and they had a really nice business program. And so St. Ambrose was about a 4-hour drive from home. So if I had to come home last minute, I could do it. But it was kind of the right fit to go there. And I met my wife there. That was the biggest thing from it.
The bonus
on
part.
top of a great education. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to look at all the different options that young people have today for education and career. And, not every particular university or college or trade is right for every particular person. And each one of us has our, strengths and weaknesses and interests and ideas and the way we grew up. And so it's nice that there is a variety available for young people so they can go the path that they think makes the most sense for them. And, I think business is such a great approach for many people. And I grew up in a family business, worked for my dad in high school. And so I always thought, well, business makes sense to me. I understand it. It's what I knew. And I really liked it going through college and knew that, like you, that was something I wanted to do someday. Didn't know exactly where it was going to go. But I think the liberal arts approach is really good for business.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked my time there. They gave me a really great foundation. So I had the business undergrad, and then I ended up getting an automatic minor in econ. I really liked econ. And then I sort of selected to also get a minor in psychology. And I really found that fascinating too. So I had a high school teacher tell me, if you study psychology and business, you'll get a really good job in marketing. And so, there's some truth to that. I don't think I used my psychology degree much or minor much, but at any rate, I really enjoyed the time there and really appreciate it all. And some of the relationships that I still have there are still there today.
Well, I think that was great advice from your high school teacher, because I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I enjoyed economics as well, and all of the ology classes, sociology, psychology, anthropology, philosophy.
Sociology too.
Yeah, because it's a study of people, really, which is what the world's all about, especially for business and trying to understand why people do what they do. We'll talk a little bit about career progression, just economic development real quick. You got out of college. What led you to the Missouri Partnership?
So, it's kind of a corny story, so you'll have to bear with me on this. So I had this undergrad in business administration. And so I graduated in 94. And at that time, there were not, I don't know what I didn't really know what the opportunities were for a business undergrad. So I was kind of a little bit unclear what that was going to be at that time. And so in the mid 90s, so I'm in Davenport, Iowa, and this is a community of around 300,000 people, the whole Quad City metropolitan area. I had a lot of hometown pride, in Missouri and in St. Louis. I had a lot of pride, and I was so surprised at how little awareness people in the Quad Cities had about St. Louis, my hometown. And here I'm thinking, this is only 4 hours away. And I would think that maybe, folks would go, even the baseball teams, they were probably somebody may debate with me about this, but I think there were about 60, at least it felt like 70, 80% Cubs fans. And maybe if the balance is Cardinal fans. I've heard later that it's 50-50, but it didn't feel that way when I was there. So my point is there was no awareness that I saw, at least among my college peers. And so add that with, I really loved taking my college buddies to my hometown and showing them around on the weekends, or like long weekends, or even sometimes if they didn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving, I would take them, with me, and we would spend Thanksgiving weekend or something like that in St. Louis. And I just loved showing them around. And I thought, is there a job where people do this? And that's the thing about our profession. It's not well known. Even today, most people don't know the economic development profession exists. I just found a lot of pride in doing that and showcasing my community. And then I had this undergrad degree in business, and I thought, how can I really apply this? And then the other thing is there were a lot of big things going on in St. Louis at that time, when in the mid 90s. So I don't know if you remember all this stuff, but the Rams were relocating to St. Louis, and they were building a new stadium. There was a new, what's now Metrolink, that was under construction in the mid 90s. And then the Blues were building a brand new stadium. So it seemed like there was kind of this renaissance going on. And I was just, this is pre-internet. So I would go back and grab just devour the newspaper to see what was going on and get the latest updates on all those things. And then I basically discovered this group. At the time, it was called the St. Louis Regional Commerce and Growth Association, or RCGA. Today, that group exists in a different form. It's called Greater St. Louis, Inc. And so I basically hounded them to work there as an intern for nothing. And I didn't really have any connections there either. So it's all about who you know. And I didn't really know anybody. So I hounded them for months about this. And eventually they said, all right, well, we've got to shut this kid up. We're going to hire this person for the short term here and see what happens. And that's kind of what it was.
Good life lesson right there for young people looking for a career.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was pursuing exactly what I wanted to do. And like I said, that when I was at that age, that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't know anything about the profession still, so at that time. So that was the beauty of it.
Well, tell us about the Missouri Partnership.
So we're a public-private nonprofit economic development group, and we were set up in 2008. So we just celebrated our 15-year anniversary. We really do one thing, and that is work to bring new companies to Missouri. And that objective is to create jobs and investment for Missourians. So there are kind of four, depends on who you ask, 4 or 5, legs of the stool of economic development. And we focus really on the one leg of the stool that's all about business attraction. So that's bringing in companies to Missouri. So we work very closely with the Missouri Department of Economic Development and the Hawthorne Foundation. So the Missouri Department of Economic Development is our public sector partner, and the Hawthorne Foundation is our private sector partner. But essentially, Department of Economic Development contracted their business attraction function to our group. And so every single day we are focused on one thing. And I think that's why we do really good work, is because we know what we work on and we know what we don't work on. And so we go out and pursue opportunities to create jobs for Missourians.
Well, we appreciate everything that you're doing for the state of Missouri and all of its citizens. I think I'll say this, for most people, I believe, that live in Missouri, they think it's a really great place, and that's why they live here. What would you say are Missouri's competitive advantages? When you go to market, what are the things that you're talking about that differentiates us?
So there are so many things, about it. So first, I would say Missouri has one of the most diverse economies in the country. And you can't really have a diverse economy if you don't excel at multiple industries. So why that's important is, we don't have one industry that's dominating our economy. So if that industry were to maybe falter, it doesn't bring down the entire Missouri economy. But at the same time, if that industry is really thriving, the Missouri economy can grow, but it may not grow like you might see on the coasts. So the coasts tend to have pretty more significant swings in economic activity. Missouri has its ups and downs, but they're much softer. And so that's important because when we're courting companies, they're looking at investing Right now we're working an $800 million beef production plant is under construction. That's almost $1 billion going into the ground in Missouri. And they want to make that investment in a place that's sort of a safe haven. So companies look to mitigate risk, and Missouri's diverse economy does that. So in addition to that, we have a AAA bond rating, and we've had that for decades, and we have it from all three credit rating agencies. So that is, again, part of the mitigating risk. So when we make an offer to a company, they know that offer is going to be there and it's going to be good. Not every state can make that claim. So that's just one component to some of our assets. We also have the second lowest corporate income tax among states that have corporate income tax. We're second in apprenticeships and second lowest cost of doing business. So those are some of the things that employers are looking at. So when I talk about our industries, we're so diverse, but we do excel in many of them. So one is manufacturing. So we have a very diverse manufacturing base: automotive, aerospace, defense. We're seeing a lot of food processing, construction materials, and kind of general manufacturing. So we do well with manufacturers because of our central location and our lower cost profile. That's part of our value proposition for manufacturers. When it comes to distribution centers, so we see a lot of activity in distribution centers as well. So these are these big warehouse facilities to get products from manufacturers to the consumers. And so being in the middle of the country, and I don't know if you knew this, but we are the statistical population center of the United States, statistically the population center of the United States. So if you had to distribute something to every single human being, you can't find a better place to do that than Missouri. So we see a lot of distribution centers in here. We have all Class 1 railroads coming through Missouri. The intersection of the Missouri and the Mississippi River, two largest river systems in North America. We have the most northern ice-free port, full access to the Gulf of Mexico and all the globe and all of North America. All that's happening right here in Missouri. So those are some of maybe the traditional industries that we have, but we also have some emerging industries too. So on the western side of the state, we have this strong cluster of animal health and animal health companies. So there are over 300 animal health companies in the animal health corridor, which is large, anchored in Kansas City. That's the highest concentration of animal health companies in the world. On the eastern side of the state, you've got a strong plant science economy. So over 1,000 of the best and brightest of plant scientists are doing incredible work, all about, how do we increase yield? How do we feed a growing population? Our global population is growing. So how do you feed all of those people with the same amount of land we had from the very beginning? How do you deal with that in multiple climates, global climates? And so all that research is happening on the eastern side of the state. And then kind of the intersection of that is ag tech as well. So that's another kind of a newer industry that we've really been excited about. And then you may have heard about the geospatial and the role of geospatial in ag tech, but that's another industry that we've been seeing a lot of attention on the last several years. So, the way we kind of sell Missouri, those are kind of our kind of high level talking points, but the way we sell Missouri is we actually turn the conversation around and we actually listen to clients. What is it that they're looking for and how can we match that in Missouri? And that those conversations go on and on. That's endless, our talking points related to that. But that's kind of high level what we taught about our state.
That's a great approach. And you have so much to talk about. You can almost work for almost anybody that's looking to grow and expand. Yeah. It's nice to be in that position.
And Cliff, there's quality of life as well. There's the educational opportunity. There's so many things that are part of it. That's just kind of very high level. There's sporting activities. There's the Kansas City Chiefs, right? There's all kinds of things going on with Missouri.
I call it heaven on earth, Subash.
Yes. We'll make that a talking point.
Exactly. I'm sitting here thinking about and trying to put myself in the shoes and in the mind of somebody that's looking for a new place to locate their business or their operation, whatever it is. What would I be surprised to hear about Missouri? Or let me rephrase that question. What are people most surprised about when you talk to them?
So this is in essence the challenge we have in marketing the state, is that, it's an opportunity also. So the challenge is not, we get a lot of blank stares. If you travel the country and you tell them you're from Missouri, some of them might know, but we get a lot of blank stares. We're like, oh, okay, interesting. That is what you get. I've heard of it, or I've been there, or I've driven through, but not a lot of people have the awareness. And that's what we have to do in Missouri, is get the word out about why we're such a great place to locate a facility. So therein lies a huge opportunity. And so the fact that they typically don't have a lot of awareness of us, I've also worked in other markets where they have a negative perception. So whenever we throw all that data that I shared, and I can go deeper with all the vehicles that we build here, the aircraft that we build here, we've got 20 Fortune 1000 companies that are headquartered here. All of that stuff kind of blows people away. They're surprised to hear all of that. The companies that we have based here, the fact that we have 16,000 people that are making fighter jets, they don't know that, and they're surprised to hear that. Our dominance in automotive, we're a top automotive state as well, and an agricultural state too. So people are surprised to hear about all those things. And so I think they're probably expecting the whole, being in the middle of the country, the central United States, that's not too much of a surprise. But when they see all of the technology, the ag tech that's going on, the manufacturing, that is something that they don't always expect.
Well, and I'm not surprised to hear that at all. But it makes me wonder, why is that? Because I see it like you. I see that is a challenge, but with no or little perception, what a great opportunity to go tell the story, which I think you guys are doing right now. I've seen the Missouri Loves Company campaign roll out, and I have to think that that's right on target, very creative, very strategic to tell the story. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
That is. So we have kind of a multi-pronged strategy in marketing. We do a lot of earned media, we do paid media, a lot of social media, advertising, online advertising. And this is one component. The Missouri Loves Company is one component of that. So essentially what this is it's a marketing campaign to get more attention on Missouri. Now, it's a little bit edgy, and it's really fun. It's this. So what we do in this business is we kind of court companies. So it has this, if you go to the website, it's called MissouriLovesCompany.org. So if you go to the website, you'll see it kind of has this almost like a dating app type feel to it. So it's about courting companies. And so we have a little bit of fun with the play on words, and we have to really get our message out there because we're competing fiercely with 49 other states and several countries for investment. And so we don't have unlimited resources. So what we do is we try to do something that's catchy, and we're trying Missouri Loves Company. And so far, we've had a lot of positive feedback from it.
Well, I can see why. I think it's right on target. And you said the phrase courting companies, and I hadn't thought about it that way, but that does kind of give you the entree into the approach that you took.
The reason I mention that is because I think a lot of people think that companies just show up and decide to set up, their operations. And in some cases that does happen. But the process to get on a company's radar and to bring them to your state and have them invest, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, it's not just picking up the phone and saying, hey, come to Missouri. If it was that easy, we would have done that. It takes a lot to do it. And this is kind of the tip of the spear with Missouri Loves Company is just getting on that radar and getting their attention to start looking at us. And there's a lot that happens once we have their attention.
Well, and as you said, you're kind of starting at ground zero. If people don't really know much about the state, they've got a lot to learn. You mentioned some other things that you were doing in addition to the Missouri Loves Company campaign. You want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah. So we're out there in terms of marketing, we're out there getting the message about Missouri through social media. So we have a very robust social media campaign where we're putting out positive news stories about Missouri. We promote the wins that we've had in the state, and all that has an external audience. We're also going out and trying to get some earned media. And so building up relationships with reporters and having them write positive news stories. So we bring reporters in the state, show them around so that they can write stories later on. And then we do a lot of online advertising. We do some geofencing, if you know that concept. So if there's somebody we're looking to target, we can put a fence, a geofence around their address, and they may start seeing our ads. So it's kind of a neat, it's not a new, it's somewhat new concept, but it's a really nice strategy for marketing. So last fiscal year, we got about 70% of our projects, and those that's projects are what we call the opportunities when we're working with companies. We get about 70% of them from site location consultants. So this is a whole boutique industry. And so we're on the road constantly meeting with these site location consultants, making sure we know who they are and making sure that they know who we are. And they're the ones who are advising their clients on how to locate facilities strategically. So we're going around the country. We go to LA, DC, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, you name it. We go to these markets where they're based and we meet them for a cup of coffee or for dinner or for lunch. We take some of our economic development partners from around Missouri with us, and we just build a relationship. It's a relationship business. So people work with people that they know. And we've had some relationships with people we've just met this year, and we've known some of these folks for 20 years and anything in between. And so these folks are bringing us projects on a regular basis. So that's part of what our team does too. Then there are conferences and trade shows that we go to where the decision makers are there, and we're going out there to those conferences and meeting them in those areas and building relationships there too. So if it's, for example, a colleague went to a food and beverage conference just last week to try to find opportunities for food and beverage for Missouri. That's how that works too. So that's kind of the lead generation. So getting their business cards, shaking hands with them, following up with them later. They receive our materials. They'll learn all about Missouri Loves Company. That's part of what we do. And then when a company finally determines that they're looking at Missouri, we have another team that will kick into high gear, deliver high customer service, and do everything within our power to win that company, to have them locate in the state. And we do that with our partners around Missouri. We don't do this alone. We leverage our economic development partners all over the state to do that, to help sell Missouri. So that's part of that consultative sales I was talking about too. That's kind of the final step of what we do in terms of attracting companies here.
Well, I'm very impressed with your marketing plan, sales and marketing plan, because you are integrating them both together. You're taking a multi-prong approach to getting the word out, attracting people to you, using inbound and outbound marketing and social media to tell the story. I think it's awesome. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Cliff. It is, and I would encourage you to take a look at our website. You can see, the MissouriLovesCompany.org is the campaign, and that will also point you to our website if you kind of want to discover more. But you can see all of the assets we have in the state, our brochures, all that is on there. And we try to, there's a lot of information there, and we try to tailor that for every client, because not every client needs to know everything about Missouri. It's what's applicable to them. And that's our job too, is to make sure that we cut through all that noise and give them exactly what they're looking for, share exactly the message that resonates with them, and not sort of, add extraneous information. But that's our objective too. It's a very, very kind of rifle approach.
Hey folks, MissouriLovesCompany.org. So, Missouri is, you mentioned it earlier, diverse economy, diverse culture too. And you think, well, you've got some very large cities, you have very rural communities and everything in between, but you guys are out telling the story. And I guess taking the marketing approach, if you're out listening to people, some people probably are looking to come to a major city, while others are probably looking to come to a smaller market for one reason or another. How do you approach that? And what do you see going on in rural America that you think is really exciting?
So there are a lot of opportunities for rural Missouri. In fact, I have a graphic, I'll have to share it with you later, that shows where all of our wins are. And they are concentrated in the major metros, but they are dispersed geographically throughout the state. And so we tout rural Missouri regularly, because one thing that we really like about rural Missouri is the work ethic. So we were just in Japan with the governor on a trade and investment mission. And we had one of the companies that has an operation in Missouri. They were talking about the work ethic in rural Missouri, and they equated it to that Japanese work ethic, which is fairly famous. And we heard that he was speaking to other Japanese companies that were considering some sort of U.S. investment. And he said that about Missouri, specifically rural Missouri. And it resonated so well with that Japanese audience because of that work ethic. And so what we've heard a lot is, if you look at some of the folks that were raised on farms and they had to tinker themselves with some of the equipment that was on the farm, that aptitude is very important and crucial for some of our manufacturers. They say to us all the time, we need people, we can train them, but they have to have the aptitude for this sort of work. And they often say to us, can you find us that individual that grew up on a farm, that has the work ethic, because sometimes and oftentimes they have more than one job in addition to farming, but they also have this aptitude for working with their hands, which is crucial for us. So we probably, I would say 75% of our projects these days are manufacturing. And so that can apply anywhere in Missouri. So we've had some manufacturing wins in rural parts of the state. There's a company in Carthage called Justin Boots. They closed in Carthage, and a company called Belleville Boots came in and rehired a lot of those individuals, and they're making Belleville boots for the U.S. military. That's one of our rural wins. There's a huge project called Carlisle Construction Materials. They just cut the ribbon on that earlier this year. That's in Sikeston, Missouri, in a small community. It's about a 500,000 square foot plant. They absolutely love the community. It's a phenomenal facility. So that's probably one of our biggest, more recent wins. The other one is American Foods Groups. That is a $800 million beef processing plant that I mentioned. That's in Warren County on the western exurbs of St. Louis. But that has ramifications for rural Missouri too, because farmers that are cattle farmers, they can now, well, not yet, but when the building is finished, they can take their cattle to that facility versus taking it to some other location. And then they have need for cattle. So that could add the propensity to raise cattle on Missouri farms. And that has impact for corn and soybean farmers as well. So that plant has this trickle-down effect that it impacts all of Missouri, or wherever there's soy and corn and cattle. So it has a lot of applications throughout the whole state.
So lots of great things happening everywhere. So a question that comes to mind is when you're abroad or when you're talking to a potential prospect and you say rural, what do you think that means to most people?
You know, there's a definition of rural, which is less than 50,000 people. And I think the definition varies. We use a definition that aligns with the Department of Economic Development has their definition. So I think what they're looking for when we talk about rural is exactly kind of what I said. They're looking for the work ethic. They're looking for opportunities to employ individuals that have that work ethic and that skills and those skills and that aptitude. One of the things that we have as part of our organization is we have something called the rural win ratio. It's one of our 5 metrics. And we have that because we are the only group that is working to attract companies to the rural parts of Missouri. There are other groups that work in the metro areas, and we of course support them, but we're the only organization that does that. Now, we aren't able to direct companies to rural areas or direct them away from rural areas, even if we could. The companies go where the assets are. That's where they go. It's not like we can use a magic wand and say, we need you to put this facility in this particular county. They go where there's labor and where there's real estate available. And maybe there's some sort of ancillary benefit that they have in that area that's part of the supply chain or the logistics point to that. So that's where they tend to go. But we have this rural win ratio. But what we do is we have a capacity building effort that helps rural areas. It also helps urban areas too. So in capacity building, that's one of our program areas where we're looking to help our economic development partners be more successful at business attraction opportunities. So what happens in some of the rural areas is the rural areas get fewer opportunities to compete for these projects because they're looking for existing sites and buildings to go into. And so because of that, some of the rural areas because they have less opportunities, they may have less experience in working on those projects. And so we're making sure that those partners are able to do that with a couple of programs. We call it Raise the Bar Assess, where we have a company, a site location consultant actually come into the state and put communities through kind of a mock site selection exercise so they can go through this process if they haven't done it before. And then it's an opportunity to kind of learn and fall down safely in a safe environment. And you learn a lot when you fall down. And so most of the communities that have done that have been rural communities. Some of the urban communities have done that as well, but most have been rural. And then we have another thing called Raise the Bar Train, where we have kind of workshops that we hold that economic development partners around the state can kind of hone their skills on economic development. But we're not pointing only at rural areas that need assistance. As a state, we look at ourselves too as an organization, and we need to improve ourselves. We're constantly looking to improve. So we set out an initiative, I guess it's coming up on 3 years now, called Raise the Bar Compete. And this is to identify large industrial sites throughout Missouri. And it turns out most of those sites happen to be in rural areas, because in rural areas, that's where you can get larger acreage. Because right now, that is the number one thing that is impeding our success, has something to do with real estate. And so we set out to find these large industrial sites. We wanted to find 3 mega sites of 1,000 acres or more and 10 premier sites of 200 acres or more. And we only found 2 mega sites in the state. Despite the entire state was our canvas, we only found 2 mega sites that fit the profile that we were looking for. And we used the profile that companies are looking at Missouri in essence. So that's why we targeted 1,000 acres. But we found more than 10 of the premier sites, and they're all over Missouri. And so our objective is to identify those sites. We want to have them controlled. We want to improve them, and then we want to market them aggressively once we have them go through those 3 steps.
Very impressive. This has been fascinating to me. I could sit here and talk about this all day with you, Subash.
Sadly, I can't too, Cliff. That's a problem.
So thank you for being with us, because I think you've brought a lot of insight to our Outdrive audience. And, one of the reasons we do this podcast is because we know, you and I, we know how great we have it out here. But to your point earlier, people are surprised outside of Missouri to find out what a great quality of life here, what outstanding schools and healthcare and recreation we have here, how many great jobs and careers. And so, one of our goals in life is to just help educate people about the place that we have that we call home. So I very much appreciate you taking the time to be here today to talk to us about the partnership and what you're trying to do to attract new companies and new jobs to Missouri. As we close, what else would you like to share with our Outdrive audience that you think they might find interesting?
Cliff, you said it, right? We know the assets in Missouri, the quality of life, the recreational activities, the cultural opportunities, sporting teams, and things like that. We know what it's like to live here. But I would say we need every Missourian to be bullish and positive about the state. Because here's the thing, our job is to market Missouri. And so our clients do listen to us, but they really listen to peers. So they're asking, when they come here, they're going to listen to us, but they start asking other Missourians, what's it like to live there? What's it like to set up an operation and employ people in the state? And we need people to be bullish and positive, because that's the message that's needed. I would encourage your listeners to please follow us on social media, like and click and reshare and the posts that we make. And it's all, again, it's Missouri Partnership. We're on all the major platforms, so please do that. But most importantly, be positive about our state. Go to our website, check out all the things that are going on for a business. That I do find that even Missourians are surprised to see what all we have as a state. So I would just say, check it out, be positive. And, we want to deputize all 6 million Missourians to sell the state, and then we'll be really successful.
I like it. Missouri loves company. Go Missouri.
Do.
Subash, thanks for being with us today. Folks, thanks for being with us. I hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Subash Alias, CEO of the Missouri Partnership. Come back again next week, and I'll take you down the roads of rural America, where it is heaven on earth.
Thanks for taking a ride with us on Outdrive. This episode is complete, so head on over to ecallis.com for more insight you can apply to help drive your business growth. And be sure to sign up for our free monthly e-letter, Outthink, for even more helpful content about marketing to rural America. Have a great day and keep on driving.